summary. I'll try and keep an eye on the time. I'll speak for 5 or 10 minutes, but just give me a warning if I'm running over at all. So I'm responsible for a team at Essex County Council that have been working on this agenda for about a couple of years now. At one level, we're responsible for energy efficiency and reducing Essex County Council's emissions. So we're responsible for the utilities budget at the council, which has about 300 buildings in its core estate and over a couple of hundred schools on our utilities contract. As an authority, we still have quite a significant land holding and a reasonable size fleet. So we do a lot of work looking inside the organisation, thinking about how we can reduce our emissions across that estate, and we've got a very active programme of work looking at energy efficiency across the estate, on-site renewable generation, and looking at heating solutions. But there's a challenge in that for us. We're the second largest county authority in the country. There is an issue for us about scale, and that's something I'll come back to mention at the end. But we're doing an increasing amount of work, which is much more external facing, working with the community. So we have run a very successful collective solar panel purchasing scheme last year for residents in Essex. We run eco and warm homes fund projects. But we've also got a number of innovative European funded projects where we are looking at how we can work with the community to install renewable generation on our assets. So in the case of these projects, it's a couple of primary schools and one of our outdoor centres. But then thinking about how we can keep more of the value of that energy in the local community using mechanisms like local energy tariffs. So we are, however, relatively new on the community energy scene. I suppose it's fair to say. So in recognition of that, I think we saw that there's a huge amount of untapped potential. And so we engaged Community Energy South back in the autumn of last year to do some work to really help us understand what community energy looked like in Essex, because it wasn't very visible to us, and equally, as a large organisation, we probably were not very visible to individuals and groups in Essex who wanted to work in this space. So Community Energy South helped us to develop a roadmap where they did a lot of work to identify individuals and organisations in the county who might be interested in community energy. And it helped us to identify those organisations, but also just engage with them and understand where the skills and the experience gaps might be. So Community Energy South ran a survey on our behalf with the purpose of really starting a conversation with those groups about how we could best support them, what their requirements were, and how we can try and help them scale and develop community energy schemes in the county. Some of the take-home messages from that survey were, well, the first thing was we had a very fantastic response. We were delighted that we got nearly 60 responses to the survey. And actually, that just confirmed my suspicion that there would be a huge amount of interest. But with that, there was also a lot of work already happening, actually. So over a third of those groups had already engaged in some renewable energy project. And so that just reinforced to me that as an organisation, we were not doing as good a job as we needed to do to understand what was happening in the community and be connected. And actually, we were probably missing an opportunity to help those groups and those individuals in the county connect amongst themselves as well and share learning. Listening to the responses we got, there was clearly an appetite and a desire for more information, to get an understanding of what could be a pathway for these groups, for them to develop community energy schemes. There was a strong response that there was a need for project funding and training and development, but also networking as well. So it was a really, been a fantastic project, and we're really delighted with the work that Ollie and his team have done. But I think it's just a starting point. So off the back of that, having had that very positive response, it's given us the evidence and the insight to engage with the politicians in the county and senior officers and make a case for the next stage of work. And so I'm really pleased to say that we've been able to secure funding through European grant funding, but also from within the council now to create a GSEEH fund, which will help us take some of the groups that came out of that survey process, help them start to put some of the building blocks in place, start to constitute themselves where they are already well organised, help them start to put business plans, identify projects as well, and also make connections with the council. I mean, it is true that, you know, as an authority, we are investing in renewable energy ourselves, but I think there is a limit to how much we can do and how fast we can do it. And particularly in light of the COVID and the pressures that that's put on council funding. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Just to say a little bit briefly about where we are with climate emergency. As an authority, we haven't declared a climate emergency, but we have set up the Climate Action Commission, which has an independent chair. Lord Randall, who was Environment Advisor to the Theresa May government, is chairing that group. And I think what will happen with that commission is we're going to be putting in a lot of evidence to the commission about the steps we need to take as an authority to reduce emissions, but also the County of Essex. But the authority, I think, is going to shine I'll hold up a mirror to our politicians as well, and put forward some very difficult decisions and recommendations to them about the scale of investment that's required to get the county to net zero. And the Commission has 5 special interest groups, and one of those is community engagement. I think what that recognises is that that there's certainly a very strong political will to engage with the residents and communities in Essex in a bottom-up approach, and really trying to scale up some of the work that we've just started to identify through the roadmap work that we've done with Community Energy South, but also engage with any number of other groups that are already very active on other related issues, such as plastics agenda or tackling waste as well. So there's a very strong appetite within the authority for a very active approach to community engagement. I think what happened with COVID has been quite striking in terms of the challenges it's posed for the authority. And I think that pre-COVID, there had been a very strong narrative in the authority about economic growth, but it was very focused on particular sectors. It was very focused on attracting particular skills and jobs and businesses into the county. And that's changed, actually. And the conversation that we're having now with inside the authority is actually really about creating jobs and creating jobs, as many jobs and as a diverse number of jobs as we possibly can within the county, and recognising that probably about a third, we estimate somewhere around about a third of the workforce in Essex is currently furloughed. So it's very difficult to know quite yet how many those will translate into unemployment figures. But I think what that means for us is that when we're working on community energy and we're thinking about the opportunity that's presented by investment in a green recovery, we need to have a strong narrative around jobs. And that needs to resonate, that will resonate very strongly with politicians. There's also a very strong appetite as well in the authority to work through community engagement, as I've said. And one of the things that's been a huge success during the COVID, if we can term it that, during the COVID period, has been working with the community through social media and through social campaigns. And actually, I think that we will need to think carefully about how we engage with communities and through what forums. So I'll wrap up there, but I think that, as I said, that in terms of the role that community energy groups can play in the recovery, I think there is a huge opportunity for us around the climate action agenda. I do think as an authority, the pressure that we've seen on the authority's finances means that we will need to think very differently about how we fund and support initiatives. And so opportunities for us to think about community funding and community bonds and similar funding mechanisms will start to open up in a way that they haven't done before in the authority. And I think that there's certainly an appetite to see things done at scale and at pace as well. So again, a key question for us will be, when working with community energy groups, will be how can we support groups to move at pace, but also how can we support the initiatives to scale as well. So, and I'll just come back to my opening point about the size of the authority. Quite simply, you know, the size of our estate and the size of our the number of buildings that we manage across the core estate, and with schools as well, means that there is ample opportunity in terms of assets that we can bring to the table for community groups to invest in. I think the challenge for us is, and the question I've got in my mind, is how can we take you know, a handful of very promising projects and turn that into dozens of projects and scale quite quickly. So I'll stop there and take any immediate questions. Thank you for your time.
That's great. I'm going to ask people if we can move on to the next speaker, and then have questions at the end. It's really
Can I just interrupt? Ollie, you sound, I can't hear you properly. Is everybody else having the same problem? Yes, your sound's gone a bit odd, Ollie.
Has it?
Oh, we can hear you now.
Okay. I was just saying, Tom, one thing that really struck me with Essex is the fact that you set up your climate change commission, and you know, and then the coronavirus hit. So, but it was well established, which means that building back better afterwards, it's one of your top themes of your council, and really a drive of the council. And it's great. We're really enjoying working with you, with new groups, and hopefully it's a good example for other counties and how local authorities can work with community energy. So if we then move on to the next speaker, which is Nicola from Made Energy. Hopefully there's not too much feedback. I can hear myself feeding back, but Nicola, Made Energy is one of our, I already introduced you earlier, but one of our top groups, and up in Maidenhead near Windsor. And I'm always amazed to know that Windsor has real vulnerability as well with around Windsor, as in fuel poverty. And you've got some great projects. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Ollie. Thanks for the invitation to be here this morning in my own house. So I'm Nicola Davidson, one of 9 directors of Made Energy, which is a very small community benefit society run entirely by volunteers. We span 2 local neighbouring authority areas because that's where our directors live. So we're the Royal Borough of Windsor Maidenhead and Runnymede Borough Council. So 2 small areas compared to a giant county council like Essex. We have a close affiliation with Windsor Maidenhead. 2 of our directors, including myself, are former council staff members. We left our roles there some years back to form a specialist fundraising enterprise, which to this day is still commissioned by the council to provide that service back. So they know us well personally, even if the 2 hats we wear can be confusing at times. So a little bit about the Made Energy journey. In 2014, we established a financial model for installing solar on community buildings. Then we secured £10,000 seed funding from the council, which paid for development of the governance and the legal framework required to set us up, and plus a little bit of initial investment. And I was so pleased to hear Tom a moment ago is arranging this support for organisations in this area, because without that we wouldn't have begun. It just wouldn't have been possible. In 2015, we established a plan following that initial investment, and we raised full investment for one project in each of our local authority areas. They were successful, and once installed, we did very little for the next few years, largely because it proved difficult to get new projects going as a group of volunteers trying to do it in our spare time. In 2018, like everyone else, we learned that the solar feed-in tariff was coming to a close, and we're all about solar, I should have said. So we notched it up a gear and identified more sites in the Windsor and Maidenhead area, because that's the area we know best. A launch event with the local press was pivotal, in that the council invested a further £10,000, as Ollie mentioned earlier. From there, we raised all the investment needed for a total of 6 solar sites, and that investment was £450,000, and we now have over 100 members, which is great. So far, our projects collectively save 71 tonnes of CO2 per year. 3 of our sites are owned by charities, and 3 are schools with a local authority freehold. We recently secured further investment for a 7th project, which will be our largest. This is a leisure centre owned by Windsor and Maidenhead Local Authority, and I'm going to talk about that as our little case study in just a moment. We feel that membership of key organisations is important to ensure our reach and remaining well informed. So we've got 3 membership areas. We're a member of the newly formed Climate Emergency Coalition in Windsor and Maidenhead, which collectively has pressured the council to commit to a 2050 net zero target, and is currently trying to improve the council's environment and climate strategy. Made Energy aims to be a member which shows practical solutions. We're a member of our Chamber of Commerce, ensuring profile at main events, and that's to ensure that people know about us. And of course, we're a member of Community Energy South and Community Energy England, which is crucial to us remaining aware of opportunities and all the all-important networking. So this presentation really is about our relationship with local authorities. So why have we gained such a successful relationship with our council? Because we have a long history primarily, and we have personal relationships with officers and councillors which span 9 years. Made Energy is non-political, but we have a clear agenda of cutting carbon naturally. Crucially, we don't pressure the council. We never vocalise opinion of it or require them to navigate us in any way. We simply aim to provide solutions to the green agenda that we all share. We can demonstrate year on year significant community buy-in, which is naturally quite compelling for a council. We remind them also of the interest payments they receive from their investments, which is material they can use in publicity if required. And in terms of our relationship with the other local authority, Runnymede Borough Council, that relationship barely exists because our one project in that area is an academy secondary school. So while the authority is the freeholder, we don't have a contract with them. It's the academy and the school itself. We're aiming to build a relationship with them, but it will probably mostly rely on the Made Energy directors that live in that area. And they haven't been quite as proactive as us because our projects naturally evolved in the Windsor and Maidenhead area. But I think that will come. I've got a quick case study. I'm going to try and share my screen. If I can do that. Here it is.
You can do it, Nicola. Yes, it's working.
It's working. So this is Braywick Leisure Centre. This is an artist's impression of it, at least. So this is a huge new development to relocate our town centre leisure facility to a town edge playing field area. Despite our strong relationship with the council and track record of securing community investment, the council didn't bring us into this project. Instead, they left the renewables element to the site contractor due to simplicity and confidence that they had in their budget at that time, so that was natural. But budget has since tightened, as quite often happens, so last year we were invited to take over the solar element of that development. Oops, there's another project. This is quite early on, and the project is actually nearly finished. So we raised the investment, and we're now waiting to install a 107 kilowatt solar array, but only once the current contractor has left the site. At this late stage, if we were to commence our work while that main contractor was on site, they would apply charges which would double the cost of our project. This install is by far not the maximum roof capacity available for us, but it's the maximum amount that complements the combined heat and power facility that the site has already committed to for the pool and the general heating. We hope there is potential to increase our capacity later, possibly linked to further electric vehicle charging on site, or even to export some excess energy to other neighbouring organisations in that vicinity. So in summary, our recommendations to others for building good relationships with the local authorities are as follows. Gather proof of concept of your group and activities. Get a solid understanding of the council's priorities. Most are struggling and restricting services to statutory obligations, but how they're implemented can vary enormously. Explain how your activity provides a solution to one or more of those priorities. In this way, they've got a better chance of justifying their engagement with you. Get input from officers and councillors, such as investment, advice, publicity, and even presence in meetings where possible. Ensure you're not going to be hostage to any project deadlines. Remember, council decision making can naturally be slow, so particularly if your council is involved, minimise failure and their potential embarrassment. Take your time to build trust with them. Find officers and councillors that actually get what you do and are willing to champion you. You'll know that the same applies for development of any of your energy sites that you're working on. And use very simple and clear communications. Remember, they'll get bombarded by commercial providers, so ensure that they know how you're different and you represent the people in their constituency. And something we've established recently is try and take a cookie cutter approach to the projects if you can, repeating what you discover that you do really well. And I think that summarises our relationship, which was what I intended this presentation to be about. So happy to take questions when it fits.
Nicola, thank you so much. And I love those 8 points and that cookie cutter approach. It's so important because your projects all last for 25 years and you're embedded in Maidenhead and Runnymede. And that's a long-term relationship that you're offering and solutions. Yeah. So, thank you.
Interesting. It's interesting because we are now trying to promote a cookie cutter approach, but of course the feed-in tariff for solar has changed. So we can only really develop projects that are solar based where the economy of scale allows for it. So that's what we're trying to do. But we also do want to take advantage of any tariffs and opportunities. So we are now looking at heat projects. So I'm keen to hear later on from Janet in Manchester about setting up heat projects, because we do want to move one of our solar sites that we're doing at the moment. While we're providing solar, we also want to provide them with heat because they want to create a complete solution. So on one hand, I'm saying cookie cutter, but the next hand, I'm saying take as much opportunity as you can.
Brilliant. Well, that's right. Well, you can be agile and do that. So Nicola, great. So without further ado, I'll say thank you very much, and we'll pick up on questions. Keep an eye on the chat because people might have direct questions for you.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Nicola. We're going to hand over to John Taylor from the Energy Hub. John, I see your beard's grown.
Yep, making the most of the lockdown. I had a head start, to be fair. It's not all new growth, but
Brilliant, looks great. Are you set to go? Have you got a presentation?
yeah, let me just bring that up.
Welcome, John. Yeah, that's coming up and we
Okay.
can see it. Over to you.
Great, okay. Right, good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm from an organisation called the Greater South East Energy Hub. So we're a BASE-funded team, part of their local energy programme, and we work out in the regions supporting LEPs and local authorities to accelerate the delivery of local energy projects in support of BASE's clean growth programmes and agenda. So yeah, we operate over quite a large geography. There's a team of about 7 of us, and I personally cover the southeast corner of the southeast hub. So Kent, East and West Sussex, Brighton and parts of Surrey. There are other energy hubs across the country as well, set up at the same time. So in every region of England, there are similar teams working with the regional organisations like the LEPs, to try and embed lots of this local energy thinking in the growth programs that are coming forward. Traditionally, that's been focused on like road building, housing, and then bigger energy infrastructure like offshore wind and nuclear. And we're there to give a lot more visibility and presence to the growing agenda around electrification of transport, smaller scale renewables, electrification of heat and all that. So we're there to provide extra capacity to those bodies and local authorities to do better on those sorts of topics. Okay, so these, what I'll do is I'll just go over some of the kind of energy plans and strategies that have been developed over the last year, because fortunately, I think in the post-COVID build-out, a lot of this net zero stuff is going to stick. We've spent the last few weeks providing evidence back to BASE and MHCLG and other government departments about what sort of work could be accelerated and scaled up if more investment was provided from the government around net zero and clean growth. So I think some of that kind of discussions around kind of green recovery is going to come good, hopefully. So in each of these areas, a couple of years ago, BASE commissioned regional energy strategies, and I think they're always good places to check about what the direction of travel for the various regions are. So I'll just change the slide, take us a second. Yep, so across the area covering from the south coast, from Hampshire all the way around to Essex, this document was produced called the South to East Energy Strategy. And it was an example of what does this region need to contribute to meet the kind of longer term carbon budgets that the government has set up to 2032. So this was prior to the net zero adoption, but it's all at the scale kind of necessary to kind of get us in that direction. And it shows various kind of working themes across low carbon heat, renewables, smart grids, transport, and energy saving and efficiency, and particular project types similar to that cookie cutter approach that could be replicated in all areas. So we've been looking at things like solar car parks, district heating, helping councils review their own estates for energy efficiency and solar opportunities and things like that. And going a bit closer in geography, we've seen over the past year a lot of councils adopt climate emergency plans more coherent approaches to this, as Tom was referencing earlier. Some have been published recently. Ada and Worthing down on the south coast have a really good action plan for a 2030 carbon neutral target for their own operations. Similar in Surrey, they've just published a new climate strategy and action plan. We've done a bit of reviewing of these, and some of the common challenges I think that are relevant for community energy groups to consider that are coming out of this. There's a particular challenge about scaling up renewable heating. All these places particularly, there's going to be slightly easier to do that off the gas grid, I think, just because of the economics of it. But all across the board, renewable heating is an issue. Schools as well, a common thing. just the way schools operate, they're quite a challenge to still get in individually and encourage schools to make changes. So where communities have a presence with the schools and can influence them, that's always a useful thing. And the net part of these net zero plans are always a challenge as well. So when it comes around to offsetting, there's quite a bit of what these councils will need to still offset, either through, they're looking at tree planting, but also procuring renewable energy from outside their own estate to help that. I'll go into that in a bit more detail. Right, so again, how community groups can participate and promote existing council schemes is really relevant. This is, the bulk buy scheme Tom referenced earlier, Solar Together. It's also operating in other councils around the country. Kent have been running it, Suffolk, Essex, London, and we're trying to encourage other councils to adopt this endorsement of a bulk buy scheme, which can lead to several thousand kind of installation jobs per auction round as people sign up to get kind of better value solar products. Could this sort of approach be expanded to other technologies? That would be interesting to see. So, and also councils have been continuing to operate their fuel poverty support programs. So helping to promote and participate in those schemes will help kind of those jobs and installation works carry on. Slightly different tack. A lot of these projects around fuel poverty, it needs to expand to the rest of the market. We know there was some things around the Green Deal a few years ago trying to make the able to pay energy retrofit market take off, and it didn't quite happen. So these are a couple of really exciting schemes operating by some of the community energy partners like BESCO and Retrofit Works. So Warmer Sussex and Cosy Homes Oxfordshire are trying to trial a new whole house retrofit approach where you would get an integrated retrofit plan based around energy efficiency, renewable heating and renewables, which would then be financed through a kind of pay-as-you-save kind of heat contract, where you would then stagger the repayments of that work over the lifetime of the installation, making it more affordable. And I think, finding ways to support these sorts of pilots to scale up is going to be really valuable going forward. So participating in those and helping that. Okay. And also pilot new approaches as well, kind of building back better. There's some examples around the UK of places that have already innovated and are kind of living labs for what the next generation of the energy system is going to look like. So down on the Isles of Scilly, they've got a Smart Energy Island project, which has been funded through Innovate UK. And it shows kind of an island operating as a virtual power plant. So they're going to be, they've installed heat pumps, lots of solar panels across the island. They've got electric vehicles operating as kind of community pay-as-you-go vehicles, which then, when they're plugged in, operate as flexible batteries for the grids with two-way charging. And then they're developing a software platform to balance out all these different supplies and demands to make a stable, localized energy grid, which can then interface with the wider national grid. And they're also putting all those assets on the island into some form of community-owned entity to ensure the financial benefits stay with the residents on the island as well. So they're partnering with the private sector and technology partners, but doing it through that social enterprise structure as well. And the format of this is now being applied in Oxfordshire and Sussex through bringing that approach to the mainland through Innovate UK again. So there's Smart Hubs project in West Sussex, implementing a very similar approach, and also Project Leo in Oxfordshire. So where funding opportunities come up, I would recommend community energy groups trying to get involved with these kind of more innovation-focused projects as well, and partner with local authorities on them. There's a few photos of the Isles of Scilly there, with their solar rooftops and electric police cars, all kind of making the most of the sunshine down there. Yep, sure, won't take much longer. So yeah, there's a partnering opportunity. So local authorities have land. There's a power paired is a a project run by Forum for the Future to help local authorities share assets and land with community energy groups. And also, if community energy groups are building out renewables, entering into power purchase agreements with local authorities can also help them offset their net zero commitments. And again, on the planning side, neighbourhood plans are still the route to get these like installations like wind farms and solar farms integrated into the local planning system. And then there's money available through the Community Infrastructure Levy and Section 106 still for community energy projects. On the pound side, yeah, we're seeing new financial instruments like community municipal bonds come forward. This is a really exciting project where councils can borrow money from their citizens, like to help green investment within the community, within the county, and if this could open up new institutions for maybe revived building societies to fund some of that retrofit works sort of activity. So a really exciting innovation there. And then something that we're operating on, I'll just finish on, is the Rural Community Energy Fund. So we've still got over £2 million of grant funding to pass out to community energy groups that want to look into technical feasibility studies for renewable energy projects in your locality. And we can do that for an initial feasibility grant of up to £40,000 and then a more in-depth and development grant of £100,000 to help you get through the planning process and do more detailed studies. We've given out quite a few grants already to projects including district heating, water source heat pumps, solar farms. So that's all open for business through the lockdown and going to be around for the post-COVID recovery as well. So there's our details. Okay.
Thank you, John. That's brilliant. And it's really good to hear those examples of the Scilly Isles and Smart Hub and Project Leo and the link that the community energy and communities are involved with all those projects and form a part of it, because, to help communities actually embrace the change, they need to be involved. And I'm really glad you brought up community municipal bonds, because I've heard a lot about these and also read a lot about how Second World War, the war bond worked, and it feels like a really fitting time to explore this and a good link between local authorities and communities. So thanks, John, and your slides will be available. Keep an eye on the chat, no doubt there will be some questions.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. And now we're heading up to Manchester, where Kate Eldridge can take over. Kate, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I don't have any slides to share. I'm just going to tell you a story.
Oh, wonderful. We're looking forward to that. So Kate from Greater Manchester Community Energy?
Community Renewables.
Community Renewables. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Kate Eldridge. I'm a founding director of Greater Manchester Community Renewables, and I was formerly a director of Stockport Hydro as well. Those are both voluntary positions. In my day job, I'm company secretary for Unity Trust Bank. I'll talk about the GMCR experience of local authorities in the form of the story of GMCR. A bit about GMCR to start. We install solar panels on schools and community buildings. The site gets a 25% discount on the electricity from the panels compared to their main supplier for the life of the project in exchange for a 21-year roof airspace lease. We've got 9 solar arrays, 8 of which are on schools and 7 of those are local authority schools. Now, we weren't always good at working with local authorities. Our story begins in 2014 when Manchester City Council had crowdsourced ideas for spending the dividend they received from their investment in Manchester Airport Group. More than one person had suggested solar panels on schools, and we formed a group to make it happen. The lead council member was keen and the officers were engaged. And January 2015, we'd done site feasibility, but the council wanted the project to be completed by April. And because of that, the project was moved to a different team of officers who decided to spend the money directly on installing a solar array. So a solar array was installed by the council, but just it was the one array and it was not to do with GMCR. So after that, not to be dissuaded, we approached the 9 other local authorities within the Greater Manchester area, and Salford City Council were keen to work with us as they didn't have capacity to do this kind of project themselves. At that time, we were receiving peer mentorship support from Bath and West Community Energy, who told us about the cooperation agreement that they had with their local council, which is a non-legally binding memorandum of understanding. So we agreed something similar with Salford Council, and on the back of that did some press work with the Mayor and the Planning and Environment Councillor celebrating our new partnership. The Climate Change Officer within the Planning and Environment team is very supportive. He understands community energy and was already involved in an energy efficiency group as a volunteer. So, as you all know, in summer 2015, the government announced a proposed 90% reduction to the feed-in tariff. So we had to pre-register our sites by the end of September 2015. So the Climate Change Officer at the council quickly wrote out to all their local authority schools and asked them if they wanted to be involved. And that was really important because the council is a trusted partner of the school, whereas we were a group of volunteers with no track record who they probably never heard of. So through that introduction, there were some schools who wanted to get involved, and we then went on to meet with the head teacher or the business manager at the school and tell them more about the project. And from that, we had enough sites to do our first share offer. And just as an aside, since Nicola at Made Energy is here, thank you so much for writing a share offer before I had to write one, because I read yours from cover to cover before I wrote mine. So I'll go on to talk about the legal agreements, which is where the relationship became really important. The property team at the council then became involved, but they were very busy. And the surveyor agreed to meet with us so we could tell him more about the project and encourage him to make time for it, given the deadline we were working to try and get things done during the school holidays. I won't pretend that everything went smoothly on schedule with legal agreements, but I also don't want to take up your whole day. So I'll just mention a few key points. One of the things that the council helped with was, before working on a lease, your solicitor will do some legal searches, one of which is the local authority search, and it costs a couple of £100 per site that you pay to the council. And the council was kind enough to waive that fee for us. It's not much in the context of a council, but for a new voluntary group with no income stream and a limited budget, it was really appreciated. We also engaged with the planning team at the council to confirm that our small solar arrays were permitted development. And then the next thing that happened was that when we were talking about the lease, there was a debate about what would happen if the 21-year lease was to end early. And there was discussions about how that would be resolved. And basically the clause that we came up with in the end needed to be signed off by the mayor. It wasn't something that the property surveyor could sign off himself. And so that particular issue in the lease negotiations got escalated up to the mayor and it was signed off. And so that just shows the importance of him being involved at the cooperation agreement phase to approve that compensation clause. So in summer 2016, we went on to install panels on 3 schools in Salford. Yay! We organised a launch event once the panels were installed, and pupils from 2 of the schools attended, and the mayor was kind enough to come along with local councillors from the areas where the schools were, and we did another celebratory kind of press piece. So in 2018, the fit had been reduced, but GMCR was back for more. We asked the council's energy manager for a list of the high energy using schools, because now the fit was lower. We wanted to have greater on-site usage of the electricity produced by the panels. And so the energy manager provided a list and we approached those schools. And I guess both GMCR and our contacts in the council were kind of learning as we went along, and the property surveyor got the delegated authorities he needed to proceed with the leases at an early stage, and that helped the timelines. But we still haven't got it quite right, because when we went to talk to the schools from the high energy using list, it turned out that some of them needed roof repairs the very next year and so wouldn't be suitable. We also had an issue that the education team hadn't been fully engaged, and so when a school that was talking to us had a question about the project, they would go to their usual contact in the education team, who didn't really endorse the scheme or didn't know much about it. So in the end, that was resolved by internally in the council by the climate change officer. Another example of the council support is that we were talking to a school, and the head teacher was on board and the chair of governors was on board, but there was one particular governor who had questions about our electricity supply agreement with the school, and the council was kind enough to arrange for one of their legal team to advise the school about our agreement, and we renegotiated the whole agreement and convened a meeting with parties from the council, their legal team, the school governors. But despite all that work and effort, this governor wasn't persuaded, and that site didn't go ahead. So that year we ended up doing two more sites. So 2019, we came back again for more, but we'd learned from our mistakes. So we had, at the very beginning, we had a meeting with the council, where the energy manager, the property surveyor, the climate change officer, the planning officer and the education team were invited. And we talked through the list of sites, and we ruled out the PFI sites and the church sites and the ones needing repairs, and we came up with a list to approach that way. And since then, we've been continuing to build on the relationship. For example, our share offers have had a notice published in the council channels, like their Life in Salford magazine, and the energy manager has been helping us to liaise with meter operators to sort out export meters. And now one of our directors attends their low carbon board meetings as well. If I've got time, I'll go on to talk to about a new relationship that we're building with Bury Council, which is another of the local authorities in Greater Manchester.
Okay, so, if I can give you a minute, can I give you a minute?
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
It's all right. So basically with that council, the governor from a school had heard about GMCR and approached us. And so that governor did a lot of the relationship building with the councillors on our behalf. And we talked directly to the property manager about the lease. But generally that governor did a lot of the relationship management for us. So yeah, in total we ended up with having 9 sites, which we've got now. They come to about 350 kilowatt peak. To conclude, we worked with the officers that I've mentioned, responsible for climate change planning, energy and education, the councillor with the planning and environment portfolio, the councillors representing the area the school's based in, the mayor, the head teacher, the business manager at the school, and where we can, the school governors. And by doing so, we've received help in lots of different ways, from identifying the sites, help with legals, the export meters, and the council's delivering on their carbon reduction priorities. They're getting an educational resource for schools and investment into their buildings, and occasionally some good publicity. We're showcasing renewable technology in the heart of the community. We're providing a display board at the site showing what's being generated. And this year we donated our first community fund payment of £1,000 to our first school for their recycling project and cameras for their bird boxes. So it just shows that when community energy groups and local authorities work together, it can genuinely be a win-win for both parties and the communities we serve. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Like the other speakers, we'll put the questions in the chat and then we'll pick up with them. But thank you for highlighting that win-win-win and your timeline of all your projects and working with the councils, you know, and embedding yourselves in with the council and supporting them. It's brilliant to hear. And I see that Mike Smythe's on here today as well, from Solar Schools and Schools Solar Co-op, sorry. And in the Southeast, we've tried to map all the solar schools for 11 groups, which comes now to over 100 solar schools. And I'm really keen to try and encourage the sector as a whole. If we map all of our school projects and try and get all the groups involved with schools to overlap and share experience, it would be so useful to everybody. And like you said, you know, up in Manchester, you were able to read Made Energy's share offer and you know, use it as a template.
Yes, that was very helpful.
That's what community energy is all about. And thank you very much. Yeah, that was fun. It's a nice link. I look forward to, I'm sure you and Nicola will catch up offline. So we're going up from Manchester, we're jumping across to Cambridgeshire, and where we've got Janet, who is upline. Have you got a presentation, Janet?
Yes, I do. Hello.
So hopefully you're going to share your screen. Hello and welcome.
Thank
and
so
I'm going to press you for hopefully to be about 8 minutes, if possible, so that we can really pick up on the questions and hear everyone else.
I'll try to fly through. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Janet, yes, I can see your screen. You're away.
Fantastic. So quick introduction to myself. I am Janet Hall, and I'm actually working as a community engagement consultant for a project that is led by Cambridge County Council. They have kindly lent me the slides from today's presentation. And the presentation is mainly focused around heating Swaffham Prior, which is a community heating project that I've been involved with for the last year. I was hoping to actually show a video that gives an overview of the project, but it is 2 minutes long, so I can send you the link in the chat box instead to have a look at that. But just to give you a quick overview of the project, this is a community-led project. It was a community land trust that approached the county council about bringing it forward. It's backed by the county council, the Greater Cambridgeshire Peterborough Authority and BEIS. At present, we have 166 homes signed up to the project out of 314 homes that are in the village. Sorry, the video will give some more context to the village itself. It is a conservation village, kind of sitting between the Fenlands and the Heathlands in East Cambridgeshire, about 8 miles away from the main town. The aspiration is to take homes and connect them to ground source, air source heat pumps by 2021, which is located in a central energy centre just outside of the village. And the whole programme should reduce the carbon footprint of Swaffham Prior by 36,000 tonnes in the first 20 years. And that's based on the 166 homes signing up, not the full 300 that we would aspire to. So this diagram just gives you a quick overview of the 3 main energy sources. So we have ground source, air source, and also are looking to install solar panels to provide energy for the heat pumps. So it is aiming to be 100% renewable. We're actually hitting about 97% renewable on the project at present. So to give a bit of context to the project and what it means kind of in terms of national policy, we are currently in the 5th carbon budget that has been set to achieve net zero by 2050. And you'll see the red line has kind of stagnated between CB3, the carbon budget, third and fourth carbon budget, and that we really need to kind of push more innovative projects to reinstate that growth and bring us closer to the net zero 2050 budget. Within Cambridgeshire, and this is a diagram that shows our current carbon spend. So you will see transport is the biggest contributor within the county, but where the County Council is currently putting its focus is on the two sectors to the right side, which are domestic buildings and commercial services. Services and industry, which accounts for 48% of our carbon footprint. The reason being that these are buildings and that they are kind of the controllable infrastructure that can be put in place, whereas transport takes more of a cultural change at a national level. So buildings are the angle from which the County Council is looking to tackle and make those clean energy targets. So this shows the divergence that would be happening if we continued just following kind of UK policy and the projects that are in the pipeline within the council and within the country. This top black line shows where we would be running towards net zero, and the red line shows where we need to be going. And so there's obviously an increasing disparity there, and that set the pathway for Swaff and Prior's project to happen. So this is an overview of what Cambridgeshire County Council have been doing over the last few years. They have a dedicated unit which is mobilising local energy, and that has borrowed significant sums, capital sums, to make these investments and supply energy through the council. So we have Strangford closed landfill site that is making a planning application this summer, as is Babraham Park and Ride. And then I think it was 6 years ago, the Sewham solar farm was built. And like Essex, we have a schools programme that has now retrofitted solar and so on over the last few years in 50 or 60 schools now. Swaff and Prior, it should be said, kind of is it's the first community-led project that the council have been involved with, and marks a sea change, I think, in how they are approaching projects as well, and some of those challenges I'll pick up on later. But this is an overview of the council's priority areas and how this community heating project kind of fits in with those. So the first point being mitigation of energy and waste, the second being adaptation, and how the project looks to build more resilient heating systems and more resilient infrastructure that has a long-term function in communities. And that resilience is, of course, experienced at the customer level, stakeholder level. And then the final point being natural capital and the impact that the project can make on air pollution. So this is a bit more detail about the project itself. And I just wanted to kind of highlight what the county's involvement has been and how the project was made possible by their input. And so, as I mentioned, the Mobilising Local Energy Investment Unit has provided a lot of support to the community itself, and that they have enabled the borrowing capability that has been required to raise the grant funding that is needed for such a kind of big capital investment project. But also that they have provided the relationships with highways, rural estates. It's actually, this energy centre is being built on county council land. and also that they will be investing in the non-revenue generating components of the heating scheme. And then the Energy Centre again is on County Council Rural Estates land. It was designated for commercial land use, and we fortunately have a supportive tenant farmer. So the diagram on the right of your screen just shows what the layout is actually going to be of the boreholes and the solar array, and the barn, and then just towards the west, effectively, is the beginning of the village. So this is a very complicated legal and financial structure of the project, which again has been made possible by the fact that the County Council has the ability and the powers to generate, distribute and sell heat to its customer. So if you look to the right of your screen, you'll see a logo which belongs to the Community Land Trust. And I think essential to this project has been kind of working out what that governance arrangement is and how the Community Land Trust have an ongoing stake in the project, and how they can represent the community in this, and the ongoing kind of pricing arrangements, the ongoing decisions that need to be made over what is a 20-50 year investment. I don't know if I have time.
Can I ask you to finish off so that we can
Absolutely.
get in?
Last slide.
I'm born into it.
So just some of the challenges from the County Council's perspective has been the shift from projects that have a small number of stakeholders to projects with a very large number of stakeholders, being the local community and the interest in being involved. And the level of resourcing and expertise required, the new financial models that are presented by Community Energy and Heating, the fact that every project that the council is involved with is likely to take on a new financial model, and the commitment that is expected. And again, like Essex, scaling up these projects is going to be the challenge. The County Council has an ambition to take 10,000 homes off oil. So this project with Heating Swaff and Prior is hopefully a template for that in the future. And what the community has provided, deep community involvement, leadership time, very skillful support. So the project board that is involved with Heating Swaff and Prior actually has experts in development planning and biodiversity on side, which has made a huge difference because the council doesn't necessarily have the resource to bring in those specialties early on in the project when they are useful. Energy enthusiasm, and again, kind of this connection with education has been really important. Thank you.
Janet, thank you very much. What a fascinating project. And I'm sure there are lots of the community energy groups that would like to dive into it. So we'll share that information, but thank you very much. And I note as well that it went from the Land Trust to Cambridgeshire County Council being involved so that the Bases Heat Network Delivery Unit could get involved and provide you know, more seed funding to get it off the ground. And 10,000 oil boilers is a great ambition. So we're all watching, and there are other projects that we can link you up on that. So Liz, I'm gonna ask you to highlight some questions, or if there's anybody that wants to show their hand to ask a question to get you kicked off so we can see you all, because there's been a whole array of questions in the Q&A. I noted that Tony from Reading Community Energy started off a discussion on energy efficiency, and there was discussions going on about hydrogen as well. Somebody on the call from Pembrokeshire saying about a project in Swansea.
Why don't we start with Chris from Avesco, who had some questions about education and schools. Is that all right with you, Chris?
They're obviously sitting.
Right next to me.
Questions?
Do you have a problem with Department of Education?
Yeah, maybe you could say it for me because I'm going to get.
Okay, so Chris's question was if it was where's it gone? It was about problems with Department of Education, really, because that was a stumbling block for us at Avesco. Has anybody have any of the speakers any experience of tackling that?
I can share our experience, which was we've had 2 interactions with the Education Funding Agency. The first was in 2016 because we, as well as doing that work with Salford, we worked with a charity to install panels on the community centre, and the lease of that community centre had a charge over it by the Education Funding Agency, and so we ended up negotiating the entire lease again with the Education Funding Agency. I think we expected to send it off to them, to a charge holder, and get 2 or 3 comments and then for it to be signed off. And they made 50 or 60 amendments that they wanted. And so we ended up renegotiating it all again. But the officer involved did, take evening conference calls with us and stuff like that, and helped us push it through to get it done so we could do the sites in the school holidays. Then the second interaction was when we did an academy school, and having had a quite swift engagement with them in 2016, although painful, in 2018 it took 3 or 4 months. They were very slow in coming back. They asked the school loads of random questions like how many children they had in Key Stage 1 and different things like that. But it seemed like there was a process, but it wasn't working very well. But we did get the approval eventually. And instead of installing the panels in the school holidays in the summer, we did it at the Christmas ones.
Thank you. Now, Ollie, there was a question from Tom at Celesco about onshore wind. I can't remember the question. Oh, and also he had a question to Janet about the target energy cost. Tom, are you still here? Let's have a look at Tom's still here.
Yes, hi. Yes, my question is really to John Taylor. The strategy that he presented from the energy strategy didn't include onshore wind. I can imagine the document was written when onshore wind wasn't possible, but now it's becoming more possible. Is that strategy going to be reviewed?
Thank you, Tom. Good question. Good to see you.
Yeah, I think there have been some changes about reopening onshore wind and onshore solar farms for the contracts for different supports. So there is some positive movement in that sense. I'm not sure that particular strategy would be updated, but like we'd welcome more onshore wind applications on our area, certainly through the Rural Community Energy Fund. That's one of the eligible technologies. And we'd certainly see if we can do some test cases through the planning system, either via the neighbourhood plan route or there have been the Rural Community Energy Fund people. There's 5 offices in each energy hub, and we do have meetings, and that onshore wind question has come up, and so there have been examples of onshore winds that have had planning permission granted since the kind of changes were made. But happy to talk about that more and see if we can make any happen.
So, Ollie, can I just add to that?
Yes, go ahead, Tom.
So I'm just in the process of developing a local energy strategy in Essex, and we have previously looked at utility scale solar developments on land assets that we own. We have a eight or nine sites where it looks quite promising, but we responded very positively in favour of onshore wind in the recent CFD consultation. And we will definitely be looking to try and bring forward onshore wind applications, either as an investor ourselves or as an off-taker for the power, because that's another lever that we have. So so we're definitely in support of it, and you know, would welcome looking again at our land assets to see if the economics of onshore wind are more favourable than solar.
Great, and that brings me up, you know, that link between community energy groups and their local authorities. You know, if the local authorities are, you know, adding input into like the CFD consultations, to try and make that link between community energy groups and your local authorities, and support those consultations as well, and so that you know, there's more momentum to it. So that's a really good link with the local authorities. Now, I'm just going to go freestyle and see if there's anybody out there from anywhere else in the country. I see there's Anthony in South Staffordshire. Anybody else want to throw in a question for the panel? Tony from Reading.
Yep. Am I straight on?
You are straight on.
Yes. I do Reading Community Energy Society and a load of other stuff, but we've come across loads of buildings where the tenant in a commercial building is very keen to have solar PV on their roof, and they pay the energy bills, and the landlord blocks it. And it's really, really bad. I'd really love it if Community Energy South could take that on as a kind of lobbying action, because I think it's wrong that the landlord can block solar PV on a commercial building when it doesn't really worry him too much. Like solar PV on the roof, it increases the value of his building and it helps the tenant. And quite often tenancies are quite long term, or even very long term, and probably the new people want it as well anyway. So it's a really big problem that we hit all the time, landlords blocking solar PV on roofs, commercial ones.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy.
Can you raise your hand if you've had a similar issue?
There you go. I can see a hand there. John, I think you were going to respond.
Yeah, well, I can certainly say with our connections with the LEPs, yeah, happy to raise any issues like that with those sorts of forums and chambers of commerce. And I know some local authorities have invested quite a lot in commercial property as well. So happy to kind of go and find the connections and have the conversations with the right people if it helps. Happy to take on a challenge like that.
Great, John. Let's raise those, Tony. There's a link with the energy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost like a government level thing, because we've got solar PV on commercial buildings that we've done, but too many cases of blocked by the landlord. Mm-hmm. And so I think I'm sure it's not just us that's going to come across this.
No, and do you think, Tony, John, can you not hear me?
Ollie? Oh, he's muted. Well, while Ollie gets himself back on track, actually.
From Damien Tell on that. Sorry.
Ollie, I think she's speaking. I was just going to comment on that. Yeah, it's an internationally recognised conundrum of the disincentive of a landlord supporting renewables on site, and I've seen it mentioned in blogs for years from developers in the States. I think the answer is basically start with the landlords and see what motivation they might have, what their agendas are, whether they're interested in carbon reduction. Some actually who are forward thinking might see, you know, like on a business park, that it attracts tenants, particularly when you know, there's going to be less occupancy of business units now. If they've got PV on the roof, that might attract tenants to move in there. So I'd start with the landlord, because they fundamentally are the decision makers.
Yeah, I'd just add that West Sussex County Council have been doing a business park renewable project with Manor Royal, which is near Gatwick Airport. It's a project funded with EU funding, looking at creating a local energy community on that business park. So yeah, I think there may be some learning coming out of that on that topic as well.
So
can I add?
Liz and then Tony Redding.
Just this is actually from a conversation I had with Dave Robinson a couple of days ago. The fact that I think a lot of the commercial property sector, particularly in the city, are now going to be in post-COVID are going to be in trouble. And so if some of the lobby groups that we may all know will be a part of, some of the green lobby groups could seize that and use that as an opportunity to leverage an insistence that in a post-COVID future, landlords do have to take much more account of including solar or something renewable in their contracts or in their contracts with their tenants. That would be my take on it, and it would require some lobbying with some of the commercial landlords, you know, commercial landlord associations, or some liaising with the commercial landlord associations. But they're going to, you know, they're in trouble in the future. They're facing difficulties because of post-COVID. So it would be a good time for lobbying and campaigning organisations to get in there and make an impact. So thanks for raising that point, Tony.
Great. Over to Tony. Do you want to?
No, I don't want to say any more. Thank you. Well, I've got lots more to say, but I'm not saying it.
No. It's great. Okay, and I think there's just a room for one more question if there's anybody there. If not, I'm going to close this session and summarise.
Penny had some questions.
But it's coming up to 5:30, and I expect, knowing
yeah,
the
we're
world.
so short on time, I'm happy to pass.
Thank you, Penny. So Community Energy South, we've got another masterclass next week as part of Community Energy Fortnight, looking at administration around share offers. So, I think we've had about 20 or 30 people already sign up for that, haven't we, Liz? So that's, yeah. We're looking forward to that with Share Energy and other speakers administrating.
I think somebody from Celesco, one of your people at Celesco, I think, is talking, and Andre Pinho, about managing shareholders and managing the share register. So rather than once you're out trying to get people in, it's once you've got some projects going, the most efficient way that you can manage your share register.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Look, I just want to say thank you for all the speakers, from Tom in Essex, Nicola at Main Energy, John Taylor from the Energy Hub. We really appreciate all you do for us. Kate up in Greater Manchester, you are another hero from the sector. And Janet from Cambridgeshire, that's a really inspiring project. So thank you very much. And we'll put the presentations up on the website and see you all out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day all.
Bye.
Bye.